Hey folks, welcome back to Ideas for Musicians. I had a really strange idea today that I wanted to explore in this video. Essentially, I was thinking about the number of instruments that I have in my studio. I have quite a few, but that number is of course finite, right? And as musicians, we're always looking for new textures and new ways to express our music. And so I was wondering, is there some way I can take the instruments that I have and essentially just turn them into new instruments, or have them be able to express themselves in a totally new way? So I had the idea to take some different samples from instruments and run them into a tape machine, retime them, and throw them back into Logic, into a sampler, and see if we could create some new textures and new instruments, virtual instruments that I could eventually use in other compositions. So that's what I'm going to do today. I decided to play around with a few different instruments that I don't normally play around with. So one will just be my voice. Another will be the OPZ, so like a synthesizer sound, and then a ronroco, so like it's a Andean lute. And that's an acoustic instrument. So we'll play all of those into the looper. I'll play around with some different textures, acoustic, with effects, without effects, and then I'll run them into the tape machine and record that back into Logic after having slowed down the tape or sped up the tape, depending on what was appropriate. And then we'll see if we can get some interesting sounds, and if any of that leads to, if any of that leads to some exciting instruments and textures. So yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so I'm back here in Logic, and as you can see, I went ahead and recorded all my samples from my tape machine into Logic. And obviously you don't have to do this step, but I really love the saturation that the tape machine adds, especially when you retime the tape. So in this case, slowing down the tape just adds a lot of just changes the sound significantly and adds a lot of saturation. So it doesn't always work, but I like to try that as a way to sort of make the sounds more distinct. So what I did is I chose samples from the vocal track that I did, as well as the ronroco track and the OPZ, and then I loaded those into the sampler that is native to Logic. So I can show you what I did here. So clicking on the vocal for starters. So this is the original sample. So yeah, that's how the vocal sounded after I slowed it down, and then playing around with what the sampler did to that. So yeah, kind of interesting. Definitely creates a unique texture that no one else has that instrument. So I think that sounds pretty cool. Moving on to the ronroco sample that we did. It's kind of like a little loop of what I was playing there, and I thought this one sounded particularly good. Well, first we can just play around with it a bit. But I thought that one sounded particularly good, played in reverse. So. Yeah, so, could be a nice like textural pad to something, but definitely something to play around with there. And then we actually have the OPZ. So yeah, this one kind of sounded already like a pad before we really did anything to it. And lastly, I just wanted to mess around a bit with all three of these and add in some reverb just to see how that sounds. And then on Rocco. And the OPZ. So that's all I have for today. I hope you got some good ideas from that. Obviously, that's a lot of steps and a lot of work to get a few samples to plug into your sampler in Logic. But I think it's always worth spending some time to make your sound more distinctive and create new instruments from instruments that you already have. And I love being surprised. And I find that when I put things in the sampler and when I run things through a tape machine, I can often be surprised by the results, and who knows, maybe something will be usable in a later composition. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.